our conversations take a slightly different direction. It's still about spending money, however, and we're going to be asking certain questions this morning. The CEO of Vocal Africa is Hussein Khalid, and he joins us in the hot seat this morning. Hussein, good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Ndu?
Very well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm okay.
Yeah? We still see you around the country in different spaces pushing the rights agenda. And the conversation that we're having this morning is right up that alley still. For the longest time, it's many months now, the compensation for victims of the violence that erupts from protests and Mandamano is a question that folks have been asking. There was a lot of, rigmarole about, okay, are we having a compensation committee, who's going to decide what it... So now, as of yesterday, we're seeing some numbers coming out of this and what essentially could mean. We'll ask those questions, we'll get into it and see what it actually means. Sure. Dennis, first of all, wants to take you to Egypt.
Yes, a beautiful country. You talk about ancient Egypt. Today in Kenya, we're fighting equality, especially between men and women. But in Egypt, they tried that in the ancient days because women had the legal basis to own land and also to initiate a divorce because that was in their culture. You talk about the Suez Canal and what exactly it does to Egypt, and it controls 12% of global trade, just that canal. And it is important for the country. The Nile River is the blood of Egypt because it is what gives them water, also powers their agriculture as well. But let's go to the proverb. A monkey looks like a deer in the mother's eye.
Okay.
How would you interpret it?
A monkey looks like a deer
in the mother's eyes.
In the mother's eyes. Well, I guess similar to beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So if you're a mother and you're seeing your child, of course you'll see them in the best image that you feel befits your child. But in our context, particularly the subject for today, I think it should be the opposite. And that Kenyans see politicians and those in government as monkeys, not as deers. Because we believe like 99% of our problems are as a result of their failed leadership. So to us, if we were the mother in that proverb, we would not see our government, who we put in power, and our leaders, who again we voted for, we wouldn't see them as deers. Actually, we see them as monkeys because they have failed us time and time again. They have not been able to deliver on their mandates, on the promises that they made. And that's why we find ourselves in the situation we're in today. That's how I'd see it.
He speaks as if he was to write a letter to the government. He would not start with the dear government.
No, it's
government. Well said.
Indeed. All said. So let's look at some updates about what's going on with this compensation committee and then the victims.
Sure.
The president has unlocked a 2 billion shilling reparation fund for protest victims. We know that that's the amount that they were looking at. We're going to start asking some questions about where that money comes from. Is it part of a supplementary budget? Is it part of emergency funds? Okay, so that comes up. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights has identified 1,563 victims of rights violations. And as a result of that, we've seen that certain things have happened. So the compensation fund, it's been set aside. It covers victims from 2017 to 2024 and 2025. It's being led by the KNCHR. We know this. They aim to complete compensation, not finding out all of this, to complete the compensation by June this year. So the things that they're looking at are thus: death, fatal shootings, custody deaths, 3 million shillings plus expenses is what then you would be given. Sexual and gender-based violence, 4 million shillings. Abduction, disappearance, 2 million shillings. So I guess this 2 million shillings is paid to the family if they're unfound. Severe injury, gunshot, amputation, 1 million shillings. Moderate injury, 500,000 shillings. Minor injuries, 100,000 shillings. Psychological trauma, Maybe they're giving this to everybody. I don't know. 250,000 shillings. Unlawful arrest, which then I guess this has to be proved by the courts. Unlawful arrest and or detention, 200,000 shillings, and then property damage, 100,000 shillings. These are the proposals and the framework guidelines. They're not fully paid out yet, of course, because we've just started to see these numbers as of yesterday in terms of what they're going to take control. But people have been saying, until when? But see, now we have some dates now. 2017, 2024, 2025. These are the years that they're going to be compensating people for. Seems like now that there's kind of like a plan. I'm around this thing. Are you satisfied? You're looking like, okay, for somebody who was on the front lines, you saw the people injured. You carried dead bodies, Hussein. You listened to cries. You went far and wide to see what exactly was happening. Does this kind of look like finally getting somewhere?
I would say definitely not.
Okay.
Because compensation was never our first priority. Compensation is something that has been dangled presently to make the public, to make victims, to make families and civil society forget the main agenda. And the main agenda remains justice for the victims and their families. And up to this point in time, we have done almost zero work when it comes to ensuring justice is done. And what is justice? One, for us, justice very clearly is investigations, arrest, and charging of the perpetrators. Number one, and first and foremost, that is something that, is non-negotiable. Investigate, arrest, and charge those individuals. That we have seen nothing. We can make reference to the Rex Masai inquiry. We have the Evans Kiratu inquiry. Of course, we have Boniface Mwangi Kariuki's case.
Yes.
The officer was arrested, is in court. But remember, we have over 100 victims of the 2024-2025 Gen Z protests. And up to this point in time, almost nothing has been done, because the most is when we took these families to the IPOA offices to record statements. And as we stand presently, we have not seen any movement in that regard. So are we satisfied? Are we happy? Definitely not, because our main priority, our main agenda has not been dealt with, and we have not seen movements in that regard. When it comes to families and the compensation, what we want to know after this investigations, arresting and charging, is what mechanisms are being put in place, because that's number 2 in our agenda. What mechanisms are being put in place to ensure non-recurrence?
Right.
We can't just be killing people and paying them off, killing them and paying them off. That is what we are being told presently. So there are no safeguards, there are no mechanisms being put up to ensure that we don't go back to this same situation. So number 2, we are asking, we have the various laws, including now these guidelines that are being presented to us. How are we ensuring that police, number 1, do not kill Kenyans? How are we ensuring that public order is handled in such a manner that it protects Kenyans who are exercising their rights rather than, killing them? Yesterday, when we met with the families and we were discussing these guidelines, they were like, how are we here sitting, discussing, when the government is repeating the same thing again outside? Because we had Kenyans who had been arrested the day before, Kenyans who are taken to court. So, people are exercising their rights. So it's like this is going to be a conveyor belt. Kill, harm, torture, wrongful arrests, as many were yesterday. If you saw some of the videos, people are simply chanting in town. They're not even protesting. They're just singing. They were standing and singing, and they were arrested. And I was wondering, so you've arrested this person who was singing at archives. What are you going to charge him with? Singing in public? That's not a crime.
Singing without permission.
Singing without permission. That's why they took them to a city court, because they know they're just violating their rights. So the second bit, is what safeguards, what laws are we putting in place? What mechanisms are being set up to ensure non-recurrence?
Would that trump compensation? Would you then be able to say that with the proper safeguards, with the proper implementation metrics of ensuring that this doesn't happen again, you then might not even need, and I know it sounds callous, but you may not need compensation.
Exactly.
Because you're saying then to people, you know what? We know that this happened to you, and maybe even an apology. We know that this happened to you. It shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But this is what we have done to ensure that it never happens again. You wouldn't need to you could take 2 billion shillings and put it into schools, for example. That because 5 million shillings, I don't care if it's 100 million, it is not going to bring back a life.
Very true. And in the 4 steps that we are very clear on for compensation to happen and all that, the 3rd step now is the apology. Yeah. Apology and acknowledgement. So we're saying, first of all, investigate, arrest and charge. Number 2, we're very clear, non-recurrence. Make sure there are laws, there are mechanisms in place to avoid these kinds of incidences happening again. The 3rd one, apology and acknowledgement. Like, we still have statements like these guys were treasonous, criminals, terrorists, and all that. Yeah. So we have to acknowledge that these were Kenyans who are merely exercising their rights in defending their country from corruption, from all sorts of, bad elements in government. So we need an acknowledgement. And yesterday we defined what acknowledgement is. A public apology through the president. The state must do that. An acknowledgement that, these guys were heroes and they were fighting for their country, whether it's state commendation or whatever it is, a monument with their names. We have various monuments, Moi with his rungu and all that. We need a monument that people will remember these young Kenyans for. And it's not just for Kenya, because they started a movement across the world, and we have changes in various countries from Nepal to Bangladesh, Mozambique and others, and it started from Kenyans. So we need that acknowledgement. So that's the 3rd step. And then now 4th is when we come to compensation. And compensation is not, because I remember one of the families, the mother of Eric Kasioka. Eric Kasioka was shot and killed at Parliament. He was the one in the white overall, if you saw people carrying him with the flag. And he was saying even 100 million, if I was given 100 million, it's not enough to compensate for a dead person, But it's that acknowledgement that, we're sorry that this happened to you. So it's not about the money, really. But if you give out money without these other steps, I would say it's not even putting the cart before the horse or dangling a carrot in front of a donkey so that they can run fast. Because these families now where they are, they've understood what's happening.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I want to look at the laws of the land as it does exist. You look at the Bill of Rights, right to life. We also have laws that stipulate on when to use force by the police. Police have their own modus operandi. They know how to handle protests and everything else. And if you look at the conversation, even as to take the broad-based government and stopping extrajudicial killings and everything, the only thing that is being pushed most is compensation. We're not talking about all these other steps. Because where we sit today, police are supposed to protect life, not to take life. Police are supposed to protect Kenyans, not hurt, not harm Kenyans, not kill Kenyans. And as the political class is pushing for this agenda that is seemingly easy, pay them and go. Many look at it in retrospect, they're making it easy to pay so that police can continue killing because they know we'll just pay them off and life will continue as normal. Which then brings into place perhaps another perspective, which is let us respect the Constitution, implement the Constitution and live under the Constitution as the guiding law of the land. So even as we push that, even these 2 billion shillings, when you're asking, where did it come from? All of a sudden, we have some 2 billion shillings somewhere to spend all of a sudden, which to many does not make sense. So is there any honesty from the implementers with the implementation or just respecting the rule of law?
In the statement we issued yesterday, because we had a full morning and we looked at the guidelines, we tuli chambua in and out. And we had Professor Kivutha Kibwana to help us with that. So we really went through those guidelines with the families, made them understand what's happening and all that. And in our discussion, we were very clear that we are not doing this for political expediency. Yes. We're not doing this to tick a box. If you look at the timing and also the timelines that we have presently, you will clearly see the target is June 25th. They want this process 90 days, this process to be concluded before we get to the second anniversary of the June 25th massacre. And we're saying we want this done properly. We even asked, because these are the families that are supposed to be compensated. They who are supposed to be compensated have said we want this done properly. In fact, we are asking for KNCHR to be given an extra 90 days because it doesn't make sense. Just look at one of the steps now. They've issued these guidelines and they're giving people 7 days. 7 days to comment and all. Yeah. 7 days is not enough. I mean, we managed to mobilize quite a number yesterday. I think we were around 50. But there are many others in Mombasa, in Rift Valley. They might have, other opinions that they want to key in. So when you give people 7 days only, and we understand because, yes, we want more time, but we know KNCHR has been given that time limit that in 90 days you have to conclude this exercise. So we said, these are the people who are supposed to be paid. And they're telling you we're in no rush. We don't want the money like before, give them 90 days. Let them go through this exercise properly. Whatever systems they have, they're saying 4 million because they've given minimums. Remember, the guidelines have given minimums because they know you can't pay everyone the same. Loss of life of Kennedy, the young 12-year-old boy in Rongai who was shot and the president asked if he's still alive. That one, and let's say Eric Kasioka, who was shot in Parliament, and Abdurazak, who was in hospital for several weeks, with a gun lodged in his spine, but eventually died. You can't say all of them will be paid the same. This is a young boy, this is a youth who just died on the spot. This one went through like pain and suffering for several weeks before they died. You can't pay them the same. So you have to give enough time for these people to consider all these things, and say, okay, so this is a young boy. Let's set this at this much. And maybe if there's another 50-year-old, because there was a man who I think was burnt at one of the supermarkets. I don't know, Jack and J. I don't remember the name. So you have to give these people enough time so that they can go through these cases and give figures that are reasonable. You don't want today to hear this one was paid 5 shillings. Like we had the SGBV and loss of life, which had different payment minimums with SGBV higher than loss of life. So yesterday, again, families and victims were discussing how is that so? What's the logic behind that? So people need to discuss these things in details, give people time. But when you're working, in a rushed system, because you want to beat June 25th, and you're already seeing politicians now saying they also want to use June 25th, for their mandamanos and all that, then, it clearly sends a message that this is not about the families. It's not about victims. It's for political expediency, making sure, when it gets to June 25th, we are okay. Those families have some money in their pockets and, there'll be no people in the streets, which doesn't make sense because that's not the purpose of doing this exercise.
I mean, just looking at rights over time, I look back during the atrocities that happened on the African continent, when we look at DR Congo with the Belgians, where we look at different parts of what's Rwanda, Burundi today, when we look at things that happened in West Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa. And it seems like one of the most difficult things for governments is to just say, we are sorry, and we take responsibility for this thing that has happened. But beyond that, we will take the responsibility to ensure that it doesn't occur again. in the right space. Why is it so difficult? Because entire conventions, people went to Geneva and they sat down and they said, whether it is internal conflict or external conflict, these are the rules that we will operate by.
Yeah.
These protests fall under those protocols because they are for internal and external conflict. Kenya is a signatory and has ratified those protocols and treaties. Why is it so hard? Because we seem to throw money at a problem and imagine that it would go away, but it doesn't help in the running of a state. Because the very thing that you said, people are saying, okay, they want to pay us, that's great, but there are people who have disappeared yesterday. So why is it so difficult for those mechanisms then to engage on them?
The answer is politics, no. The problem is that politicians that we have today are that politicians. They are not leaders. We have people in office who only think of their political survival. They don't think of the masses out there and what they're going through. So you have a politician who feels that if he stands up and apologizes to the people, then he will lose votes. Then he will appear as a tyrant, that he's responsible for what has happened, that he didn't do enough to save lives and to ensure there is peace. That is the crux of the matter. They feel that standing up and accepting responsibility will make them lose in the eyes of the public. And this is why they are ready to do everything else but fail to admit liability, as individuals, as people in government. And because of that, we are faced with so many challenges as a country. Because when you don't acknowledge that this was wrong, that what we witnessed was a mistake, it actually means that those under you will continue doing what they're doing because they know this is the man that we need to please or this is the man we are reporting to, and he's here standing firm. I think yesterday we saw, is it the Coast Regional Commander again issuing shoot to kill orders in Lamu? Yes, we have a problem with our youth. We know that. And we need to address the violence amongst the youth and the panga boys and all that. But the solution can never be to kill. Killing will never be a solution. Or to any problem that we have on any degree. We can't have that solution telling police, go and shoot and kill. So these are problems we are seeing every other day. And if the president, the person who's at the helm of the government, does not acknowledge, does not appreciate that we need to accept where we go wrong, then we'll have a problem. I mean, these things, it will just be a vicious cycle that we'll be going through over and over and over again.
Where there is no acknowledgement from the government, one is asking the question then, how genuine or is there honesty when it comes to everything that has been proposed, where the government is unwilling to come and say, we are sorry, we take responsibility, we commit to stop this. If that does not come out, then is there any honesty when it comes to implementing or ratifying all these recommendations that are on the table? Because many families just want the apology, not even the money, to acknowledge that a wrong was done against them.
I've sat with these families, and I'll tell you, as you've said, very clearly, 100%, it's not about the money. But you see, it's like in elections, you go for campaigns and all that, someone is coming, is giving out money, and the situation Kenyans are in, so you can't tell them, don't take the money. Because, for example, Eric Kasioka was the breadwinner in his family. He had a mother, the sister was in the Gulf. When he died, the sister had to come back. The sister now has no way of survival. If you look at Mama Kennedy of Rongai. You know, she had 3 children, including Kennedy, and Kennedy was the only fit one. The others have sickle cell anemia. So Kennedy is the one who would stay at home, take care of the siblings, while the mother goes out to fend for the family. Now, without Kennedy, the mother can't do anything because she has to stay at home and take care of the sick children. You know, and you know that this is not right. Ideally, we should stay firm and tell families justice first. We have these processes. Say no to the money. Don't go for it, because this is just a way to hoodwink you from pushing for justice. But you know that they're in such desperate situations. Some of them some water. Some of them are in such difficult economic situations that you can't even imagine telling them achaneni na hiyo pesa kwanza. So you tell them go for it. And we even ask ourselves, for instance, where is this 2 billion coming from? It's like there was money lying around, you know, doing nothing, and now the president just decided, oh, okay, where is that money that we can you give it to these guys? Because we also have to ask those questions. KNCHR has to ask those questions. Is it a budget vote? Was there a supplementary budget somewhere? 2 billion is no little money. No, it's huge sums of money. So there's so many questions to be asked, but then you're like, okay, do we just say no, or do you take what you get now as you still push for the rest?
How does it settle down with the families where we have a broad-based government that came together and that was the first ticket item, yet we see immediately the following year many more Kenyans were killed? Right now we're talking about compensation that ought to happen, but then again we have individuals who are arrested in Nairobi. You have a police that is still a force, not a service. You know, you couple all things together and nothing seems to be changing. So then as you're having these discussions with KNCHR, there needs to be a discussion with the police as well for them to be on board and give assurances that this will not happen. You've said yesterday there is a shoot to kill order that has been given to Lamu. You know, one asks the question, is there any intent? Police, government, or are we just operating on promises but no implementation?
There is zero political will to change the system as it is. I will tell you that for sure. There is no, the goodwill, even from the police service, because what we have today in Kenya is regime policing. They don't police to follow the constitution. They don't police to follow the laws. They look at who's in power and what does he want. That is why police and goons are working side by side. You know, and police will just watch as goons attack, beat members of the opposition and all that, because they know this pleases the political powers of the day. We have a police service that will say shoot to kill, because Murkomen said the same thing. Akikuja kwa police station, shoot, piga risasi kwa mguu. So you already have a leadership that is pro violations, pro brutality, pro torture and all that. So because we are police and we don't respond to the law, we will follow what the political powers of the day tell us to do. And this is the big problem we have with our police service, that it's a regime policing and they don't follow the law. And any day they will just stand, you go to a police station yesterday and say, I'm waiting for orders. You're the OCS. The law is very clear.
So there's somebody
release these people. Why wait until tomorrow for 3,000 shillings? You can release these guys. You have the power. Here is the law. It says the OCS makes the decision. But then the OCS tells you, no, I'm waiting for orders from above. You know, I have not received orders. Clearly, they don't follow the law.
And of course, we're looking into the compensation that is going to happen. It's happening. We've seen the numbers. We've seen, and also the timelines that have been given. By June this year, all of this should be wrapped up. People should have been paid their money and then be done and dusted, put it in a box and put it in the attic kind of thing. But then it seems as though you need to deal with it with a little bit more sensitivity that is required. But when we talk about these protests, Khalid, we are never far behind with the people who destroy property and may not necessarily be the ones who protest, but may be infiltrators.
Yes.
And the words that we are going to use is one of the words that's been in the public arena for the last few days, until some of them are even being invited to State House to have a conversation. Goons. They are agents of protests on one side. They are. And they are involved, and like you say, sometimes escorted by police. Somebody knows who they are. Currently, the CS for Internal Security is on a manhunt for some of them who we are told are outside the country. I could have words about that, but let's So how those who infiltrate protests or those who destroy property, those who enter into a protest for, just pure evil means and not to protest against a certain thing. How does this deal with them? I mean, I know that the numbers that we are seeing, there's compensation of I think 100,000 shillings for the destruction of property, but that doesn't deal with the issue. It takes care of, maybe there's a loss here and there, but like even with the supposed protests that we're going to see on Tuesday, a lot of businesses did not open because they were afraid that their property would be destroyed.
Yes.
Who plays here?
Maybe I begin with the first part of your statement that by June will be done and dusted. So what is very clear to us, and I believe also to KNCHR, is that this is not a one-off thing. KNCHR has a legal mandate to oversee reparations, for all ages. It's not a mandate that you do in a given period of time. We know that there's the presidential directive for 2017 to 2018, to 2025, but also that process, if you look at the 6 months given, it's not enough. And so what they've said is that they will prioritize death and serious injuries. But they've also said that people can still submit their compensation claims and all that beyond even June, the June deadline, because that is a mandate that they have. The question for reparations and victims of torture, we have laws that have been there even before this 2024-2025. I think the law that we have presently is of 2017 on compensation and all that. And the biggest challenge has been resources. There have never been resources to enable the commission to oversee the reparations and all that. So it should be an ongoing process. It's something that should have been there years ago. It should continue years from now, so that people at least understand what's happening. For us, we know that we've been working very closely with the Gen Z protest victims. So that is what we are pushing forward. We are urging the commission to begin with 2024, 2025. At least, for 2017, people have sort of like moved on in a way. We can't say that people have completely moved on. Of course, we can't say that. But we're saying 24, 25 is very recent. The torture, the psychological challenges are like happening now. So let's prioritize this as they also look at, how they will be able to manage. And it's not just 2017, it should go back to 2007. Elections should go back to even 80s and, more Kenya and all those things. They should all be factored in. When it comes to the issue of goons and Murkomen, Sijua Metoroka, we don't buy that. As human rights defenders, it's the same game, political games that are being played. They don't want to arrest these people. They know that they have to protect them. So how do you do that before Parliament? How do you do that? You can't tell them, we know where they are, but we've just not arrested. So the simplest, the easiest way is Wametoroka. They're out of our jurisdiction, because then what do? You can't do anything. So we feel it's part of the political machinations to defend those that are the goons that are appearing to be siding with the states. The Osotsi guys, unaambiwa sijui, is it 12 or something? I don't know, they've arrested 14 who have run away.
14 are outside the country.
And we said, this is unacceptable. If you know they're outside the country, that means you have the records.
Know where they are.
You know where they are.
Yeah.
And it's not even that difficult. They've gone to Tanzania. You demand that Tanzania brings them back. It's not something that you're supposed to just now sit back and say, oh, they left the country. It can't be that easy for people to just get away. So the government knows what they're doing. We believe Murkomen understands what is happening. And we as human rights defenders believe they're shielding these goons who are responsible for what we are seeing, the mayhem we're seeing in the country. And let's call a spade a spade. Government, it has every power to rein in on these goons, but they're not doing that.
Can we divorce presence of goons in the country from the police and the political class? Why do I say that? Because during the protests, we saw individuals with batons being escorted by police on police vehicles. We had individuals in the CBD saying that they were protecting their businesses with batons. Yet we had protesters who only had flags and water who were being beaten up by the police. I mean, there's a time when I was at a rally where the president was along Naivasha Road, and immediately, like 200 meters from where the president was, there were goons who were stealing from the people. So even as we talk about goons, can we divorce them from the political class? Because remember, even those who are speaking today, victims of the same, are saying all these goons are linked to political class.
So
do we then expect that the very same political class who sit in parliament would pass anything that would take away from them the people who push them?
And it all boils down to Kenyans. And we have elections coming up. And we know the people who are, the goons we saw in Kikuyu. We know who is behind those goons. And everywhere you go, there's always a politician behind it. I'll be honest with you. During the Gen Z protests, as we were coming to the end, that's when they introduced the goons. And we saw people being attacked. I think you remember Hanifa was attacked and we were coming for... And we sat down and we said, okay, there's a protest. I think it was 99. I'm not sure which one it was. And now these guys have introduced goons. And there were suggestions that we also now, when we're going to the protest, we arm ourselves. Let's make sure we also have our own batons. Let's make sure that when they come, we need to be firm and defend ourselves. And we sat there and we said, we can't be like these guys. That would not be right. And the law is very clear. Article 37, every Kenyan has a right to peaceably and unarmed. So if we were to go out there with rungus and we're saying these rungus are for self-defense, when these goons come to attack us, it would beat the purpose. And they would use that now against us. So when we were planning, we said, no, we can't do that. We're still going out there and we will demand protection from the police because that is what the law provides. So when the police fail to do their work, when you are seeing goons even in religious institutions, imagine places of worship and police just watch by. They even come in and make the situation worse by tear gassing the congregation. It speaks volumes. So I would say that politicians who cannot be divorced from the goons. The goons we are seeing today are supported by politicians. Some of them are even getting appointments, to public positions. And politicians are the ones behind this. So if we want to have a country that is devoid of goons, of violence and all that, chukua kadi. And make sure we vote out these leaders who are supporting, who are financing the goons who are causing mayhem in our streets.
Okay. Is there an off-putting nature of going into a protest and seeing police in the street whereby the first stance is not to protect the people, but, and like we see, arrests happening? Can the police safely assume that a protest will be peaceful? I'm playing devil's advocate here. But the nature of the police or any security agency is to be on the defense first. So when you see protesters coming to the city with or without prior knowledge and or permissions, as it were, do we blame them for being on the defensive first?
I would say look at practice, look at recent history, look at protests in Kenya. they are usually like 99% peaceful before police come in. Always. I mean, show me a protest where people were fighting each other or were burning vehicles or, torching buildings before police came in. None whatsoever. I mean, at least in recent times, I don't remember any. So you'll find that when police come in, they want to come in and disperse or dictate the road people should take. That's where we now begin getting to see problems.
Yeah.
So I believe that, yes, police have a duty, and that's why we issue notice.
Yeah.
The purpose of issuing a notice is for police to come and ensure that the protest is safe, that there is security. So we understand their responsibility, that if you see people who are diverting from the cause of the day, then you make sure they toe the line. But the problem is that when a protest is pro-government, there will be no disturbance. People will be allowed to do everything they want to do. But when an issue comes up, a human rights issue, people are complaining about fuel hikes and all that, then you start seeing police. And this is why what I'm saying, we have regime policing. Their duty and their responsibility right now is to serve the political powers of the day. It's not to serve the constitution. It's not to serve the laws of the land.
Right. Okay. So, taking that into consideration, then do you then say that it's almost as though it's a desired effect for that mayhem to come about? Because if compensation is taking place, then one would assume that you don't want this to happen again.
Yeah.
So then why not be almost welcoming of when somebody is sharing an opinion about a certain issue? I think about the streets of Paris, and police are almost, they know. I mean, what day is it? There's going to be a protest in the city. Washington, people are picketing outside the White House. In fact, there is a designated area for picketing outside the White House. They know they're going to come. The issues have to be heard. They let them do their business. They are registered having made complaints about a certain issue. Those things are then now discussed, when they go into the House of Reps or whatever it is that they do. So it's been registered. Are we far removed from a reality whereby it's possible for that to take place, whereby it doesn't have to be political, but that it will be read as constitutional?
Yeah. I mean, that's the message, and we hope the police are listening, that they have to be guided by the constitution and the laws of the land. Unfortunately, at this point where we are at, that's not the case. You issue notice, you do everything that is required, but if the message is anti-government, there's no way police will tell you go ahead unless you are doing something medical or education or something like that. But if it's about civil and political rights, the police will most certainly block you from delivering your message. And this has to be made very clear that and that's why, for instance, we said last week that whenever we will see goons and the police fail to take action, we will sue the police, because the time has come for us now. If we say we are waiting for the politicians or the government to ensure police deliver as required by law, that will never happen. Because for them as politicians, as government, it works for them to have police who listen to them, instead of following the law. So what we are saying is, from now on, any police officer, any police commander who fails to do their job, we hold them personally liable, because you are in that office and you are the one not delivering. You can't come back and tell us, I'm waiting for orders. What orders? The law is very clear. So we have communicated this very clearly. And we told them at any point in time there will be goons, because you've showed us in Kitale, where there were goons who attacked the Nikokadi. You went out and arrested over 100 people. That same weekend, we had chaos in Kikuyu, and there were no arrests. There were absolutely no arrests. They went and arrested people, I don't know who had issues with the land in the area, and then they said, we've arrested the goons. So where were they charged? Where were they charged? The Nairobi goons, where were they? Did you hear anywhere goons were charged in a Nairobi court? None.
No.
But Kitale, we saw that. So the police have the powers, and we're saying any time we will see goons operating and police don't take action, we will go for those police officers charge them, sue them, make sure they respond to their failure in ensuring that those goons are arrested.
Khalid, I want to look at this now that we're in this political space. 2027 is around the corner. And one would ask the question then, as we get into all this, we will definitely almost confirm that we will see more goons.
Oh, yeah.
But from the side of Wananchi who want to see change, then perhaps respect of the constitution and full implementation of the same has to be an agenda in this election, because we don't want to get to a point where then we want to get out there and express ourselves as per the constitution, which is our right. At that point, we are implementing the constitution that has given us the rights to do so. But we have goons, we have police who do not respect the law. How important then should this be an agenda getting into the election?
Definitely, and that's why I said earlier, it still goes back to Kenyans in deciding whom you want as your leader. You know, these leaders who are in office presently, and across board, we're not saying just one political side. Across board, they've shown that, you know, they have no intention of abiding by the laws, of respecting the constitution, of ensuring Kenya lives by constitutionalism. So we have the power with us. And we have to make sure that Kenyans go out there, get their cards and vote the right people. And it's an extremely important agenda that you've raised. How do we have a system that respects the law? At the end of the day, if there is no rule of law, you know, you're saying everyone, it's laissez-faire. Anything goes, and we can't have that. So we are appealing to members of the public, we are appealing to Kenyans. As you decide on who to choose as your leaders for the next 5 years, please follow through and put leaders who you know will respect the constitution and will abide by the laws of the land. Definitely.
I mean, it definitely couldn't have been said better. But just really quickly, in seconds, really, what happens to those who should be compensated, like we've seen, but for whom there's cases of inquiry as to whether there's a case to answer? Rex Masai comes to mind. There are a couple more. Okay, maybe Baby Pendo falls in that because it's 2017. Yes. Awuma's daughter, Kennedy. They are all in court, as it were. What happens to them?
No, these are two very separate processes. And it's very clear. The court process and compensation are two separate processes. One does not interfere with the other. So they will proceed as they are, and we hope all cases get to court so that we can have these people answering to their crimes that they've committed against these people. But those two are not in any way like stopping the other.
As in, you can't get compensation because there's an inquiry, for example.
No. You have your compensation and the inquiry goes on.
All right. It's one to watch. I mean, there's so many intrigues around this. Thanks for opening this up with us. And of course, the human rights are everybody's rights, that we can actually follow them.
Definitely.
Hussein Khalid is the CEO of Vocal Africa and has been here with us this morning. We keep following this, and thank you for taking the time to do this with us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.